Barbenheimer, 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 Barbenheimer.
Huh. Guess you want to talk about something.
The world will remember this day. This is the most important thing to ever happen in the history of the world.
In case you're some kind of future digital archaeologist finding this video, Barbenheimer is the epic combination of two 2023 movies that just released this past weekend. Greta Gerwig's Barbie from Warner Brothers and Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer from Universal. Now, if I remember correctly, this all started last April when this tweet, put on the screen here, made the rounds. And since then, there's just been memes and t-shirts. Apparently even Reuters was talking about it.
Must be real news then.
You know, it's so funny because my boss at work, because I told him like I was doing this thing, and he told me like I've just been hearing everything about it. Like he doesn't follow movies. He's just like, I've been hearing about it everywhere. What is going on?
It's a new cult.
Honestly, the best cult. I think it's the best cult.
Better than Scientology, I'll give it that much.
Speaking of Hollywood stuff, by the way, there's a strike happening right now, and Hollywood is basically shut down. And I think that's something that's kind of worth addressing here as well.
Yeah, so the large Actors Guild on the East and West Coast, SAG-AFTRA, concurrently with the Writers Guild of America, WGA, are striking in response to the, insane demands that the studios have laid down, or in the fact that the studios are, pretty much refusing to meet any of their demands, which are completely reasonable. I don't think anyone would really want to pay $200 or be paid $200 for their likeness in perpetuity, for example, among many other things.
Because there's like, oh, we want to just scan you in and use you forever. They're trying to bring like artificial intelligence to cut down on writers' rooms. And also just like with streaming, we have, residuals are drying up so much. People are making these movies, these shows that are becoming so big, and they get paid so little for it because streaming companies are so opaque with their numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And so, go ahead.
Oh, it's just saying it's just complete like opacity and greed from the studios that, enough is enough.
And so they're asking, for critics who are talking about these movies, just, discuss it in front of whatever they might be talking about. And so we wanted to take a moment to talk about that here. Because, this kind of big event kind of a thing, this kind of weekend with these movies have built up so much hype, they're only possible because of writers, because of actors, because of everybody else who's there, and they deserve to make a living from that.
And it's not even just, like these larger names. It's, like a lot of folks who are really just living paycheck to paycheck on this, and, being able to come to the table and get their slice is very, very important.
Exactly. It's easy to look at, the top of the top, like celebrity royalty, and be like, oh, they don't need more money. But, with writers and most, the vast majority of actors are basically working class people, that are just, they do, smaller roles, and they deserve to make a living for what they're doing.
And, as, becomes an important part of one of the films we talk about here, like anti-union sentiments can be pretty strong, but unionization is a really powerful and effective tool to get, working class people the rights that they deserve, and which are so easily taken from people by corporations that just have their eye on their pocketbooks.
Absolutely. So I want to just take a moment here to say we support the WGA strike, the SAG-AFTRA strike. We hope that they are able to, make this stand and tell studios to let them be able to make a living. I mean, hell, like A24, like an indie production studio, was able to say, yeah, we're good with all this stuff, we'll move forward. if A24 can do it, then fucking Bob Iger can do it too.
Yeah, good on him for meeting the demands.
So, anyways, to get to the topic at hand, which one do we go with first?
God, do we go with like existential drama, or do we go with the biopic?
Which is which? Aha! Let's go with Barbie's back, and oh no, she's woke now. Will little girls watch this and learn that the patriarchy is bad? Is this the commie propaganda that Eisenhower started the H-bomb program to prevent? Guess it's time to buy some dolls and hold a barbecue while embarrassingly screaming for 45 minutes about how a corporate puff piece film with SNL sketch tier humor, but also some good jokes, is bad for merely suggesting the status quo should be changed. Let's get back to the basics, when men were Ken and women were mermaid astronauts who led all branches of government. Sadly, Albert Einstein does not appear in this movie, but Ruth Handler does show up, and she's basically the Einstein of Barbie, so I guess that counts. You wrote that one. You wrote that intro.
I'm sorry.
But honestly, though, I think I do agree with a good chunk of your points there. So let's start with like an overall view of Barbie. What did you think of Barbie?
I had to be entirely honest. I try to go in with like even keel, like just let it happen and neutrally. I think I kind of allowed myself to get up in the fervor on this one, and there's no way on Earth or in Barbie land that it could ever like meet my actual expectations. I think it's a fun story. It's not as funny as the teaser sold it to me to be throughout, and we can dig into that obviously. And it does kind of feel a bit scattershot at points, but it's a fun romp, and like I think that its heart's absolutely in the right place. I think it makes a lot of valid points in a way that's like more interesting than a lot of your kind of low effort like you go girl kind of stuff does. Like that's very sort of platitude driven and stuff. This wants to deal with complicated issues, and it's successful in introducing them, but sort of starts to waver a bit. But it's overall it's a fun time, really fun to look at, great cast.
Yeah, honestly, like I'm kind of with you like all the way there, because like it's definitely a messy film, it's a loud film, but I think that it comes from a very real place, and I feel like Greta Gerwig did a really good job at like, she's done much smaller movies before. You have Little Women, 2019 adaptation there. You have Lady Birds. So having her jump into like this big kind of a thing, it's so easy for filmmakers to get lost with this massive scale of production, but I think she was able to navigate that really well.
Yeah, I think like had this been like one of your Marvel whatever products, like it would be very much like, okay, let's just take her name and then we'll just kind of sideline her and note her to death or whatever. This felt like she was allowed to kind of create and be a little more freewheeling and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is always exciting.
Absolutely. So to kind of like start breaking down the movie, so opens with basically the teaser trailer, the 2001 Space Odyssey parody. From there, we're introduced to Barbie Land, and I love the set they built, the massive pink dream house set. And apparently, love the story here that there was actually an international pink paint shortage because of the production of this movie.
I mean, it went to a good cause, so
it was
supply chain thanks you.
And the setting of this movie is that there's Barbie Land, which is like this little pocket dimension that is connected to our own. And this is one of the things I thought was kind of because usually with movies like this, like you look at the Lego movie, for example, and it's like, oh, it turns out that it's like a kid's imagination. So it's like you have the real world, and then what the kid imagines is like the Lego world.
Mm-hmm.
And there's like, it's like that very clear discernment there. Or you look at something significantly worse. Look at like Playmobil movie where it's just like, oh, they just get zapped into Playmobil world, and there's a distinction there. And I like that here. It's just like they know the real world exists, and they're just like, it's like it doesn't matter. They're just like, the movie's like, it doesn't matter.
Well, they're like, well, it's okay because we already fixed everything, so life's perfect.
Yeah, it's
over there.
And Barbie's life gets disturbed because the person that's playing with her is starting to have like negative emotions and thoughts. It's starting to come through in her own consciousness. So she has to go on a mission to the real world to save her person. And Ken, Ryan Gosling Ken, has to tag along. And while he's there, he learns about patriarchy. And because like in the Barbie world, like the Kens are all like, you know, kind of like Ken dolls.
They're just Ken.
They're just Ken, you know? And it's like, you know, with the toy line, it's like, you know, Barbie's like the you know, she does all like the stuff. She becomes like Dr. Astronaut, all that. And then the Ken is just like a little accessory with her. And that's kind of how that's reflected in Barbie world. And so when they come to the real world, he's like, oh my gosh, men do things here. Men are in control here instead of women. And he thinks it's so cool. So he comes back to Barbie land and he swings the pendulum all the way in the other direction. And so Barbie has to rally all the other Barbies to take control of Barbie land.
Right, that's kind of your premise in a nutshell. But, you know, I think it's, you know, you bring up Lego Movie, and I think that's, you know, the obvious parallel. They're both kind of centered around little, like, kids' toys, and they also have this really, sort of meta element to them. But, like, I also think it's kind of interesting about the parallel between two is, like, the really nicely, like, detailed production design. Like, in Lego Movie, everything is made of, like, Lego bricks and stuff like that, even, like, the waves and everything, or little, like, smoke jets and stuff. And here, like you were saying with these dream houses, like, there's such, like, a tactile feel to it. Like, they're all fake, and intentionally so. There's, you know, like, plastic waves that are, you know, completely static, and the sand looks really painful to fall into and stuff. But, like, it, you know, it feels like something you can play with and kind of like have that like plasticky kind of, you know, comfort sense to it or something. And, you know, even behind it, you have these like painted backdrops of mountains and trees and stuff. And it feels like constructed, like something you can get out of like a little play set rather than something that like a bunch of you know, CG artists sort of didn't post or whatnot. It all feels like just a studio kind of soundstage thing.
I think that's one of the best parts of this movie is that production design, the way that it all looks is so cool. I remember one part I was kind of wowed by where like Ken, like he tries to go surfing and he like bounces off the giant plastic wave. He goes like flying in the air, and when he lands, there's an ambulance comes, and then the ambulance unfolds like a play set into like a little doctor area.
Yeah, you know, and so like that, or like when she goes up to the weird Barbie's house, there's, you know, all this fun kind of like everything's been sort of like glued on and messed around with and stuff. And then, you know, like you're saying, when Ken comes back, we kind of get this inversion of that with all the very corny sort of saloon doors tacked on, and just there's weird video screens with horses everywhere, and just, again, it's like completely bonkers, but in this very specific way that feels like kind of kiddie logic or whatnot.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was kind of hoping for with this movie, and I love the just like that, seeing that logic at play. It's so much fun. It's like, you know, she doesn't come down the stairs, she floats down into her car, and just, yeah, like it was just such a fascinating you know, thing to look at. I love the angle they went with, Now, so again, like, so the visually, this movie, I love the direction they went with. When it comes to the story, though, things start to get a little messier.
Yeah, so like they're saying that there's this connection between Barbie, stereotypical Barbie, and America Ferrera. I forget her character's name. So is every Barbie somebody's Barbie, and no other Barbie's owner ever has like bad experiences or something?
I don't know, because it is like, I think what it is, it's like whoever's playing with the Barbie. I don't think a Barbie's like tied to like one person for life. It's just like whoever is like playing with them channels their thoughts into it. I don't know. I don't.
It's fine. It's dream logic or whatever. And I mean, I guess like they do mention other Barbies needing like fixes or whatever at some point. So it's not entirely isolated. It's not the most important take home, but it is like very scattered at points as far as where we're going with things.
Yeah, like I think one part of the story that I think did stick out for me a little bit more was because when Barbie goes to the real world, she first thinks that the person playing with her is like this teenage girl, but then it turns out it's the girl's mother. And there's a whole plot thread where the daughter and the mother are trying to reconnect. And it did feel a little like weirdly paced, where like I was like, oh, are we like they're already at that step now where like they're starting to reconcile? I don't know if that's like quite bought that they were at that point for the resolution.
Yeah, it kind of, the car sing-along kind of was enough to like completely resolve that arc, and then I guess they're just done with it.
Yeah, I'm just like, because for me, like when it comes down to it, like the rules and the mechanics of a story, like kind of like those nuts and bolts things, like that doesn't like all that being kind of like waved away, like I'll take that, but it's like the emotional parts of the story are the parts where I'm like, okay, I want that to connect a little bit better here.
Yeah.
And then there's also this component where, because when they get to the real world, like Mattel, which monitors the portal, they're like, oh my god, a Barbie and a Ken came to our real world, and now and then they took some regular people back with them, so now we have to the CEO and the board have to all go to Barbie Land as well. And there's times where I'm just like we won't see them for a little bit, so like time will pass and I'll be like, weren't they like right behind
Honestly,
them?
I was 100% fine with that. Like, geez, okay, maybe this is... I really didn't like Will Ferrell in this movie. Like, he was fine in Lego Movie doing his thing, but like, I don't know, there's just this like disquieting energy to his performance here that I really was unsettled by, and I was like, all right, anytime that my retina's done it to like process his image is a win in my book, and I am 100% fine with them being gone for vast stretches of time.
Well, I mean, he's playing a CEO, so the unsettling aura, I think, is very much in line with that.
Let's go with that.
And like, and like there's like some like fun stuff there, like when they're coming back through the portal, like they're on like an impossibly long bike. I was like, that's like a fun gag, but
yeah, I mean, you kind of saw it coming.
Yeah,
but it was fun.
It was fun.
Like, oh, they're gonna have 80 seats on that bike.
Yeah. I did like there was one really good gag near the end where like America Ferrera is like, hey, let's make like some new dolls out of like ordinary person Barbies, and Will Ferrell is like, that's a terrible idea, we're not gonna do that. And then a guy like behind him does calculations like, it would make us money, sir, let's do it, we're on it.
Yeah. I think overall, like this, that's kind of like this, that was with the humor in this film, it was really I mean, humor is so hard to parse because that's obviously such a specific, we all have our own taste, but humor is like somehow even more specific. And I think I prefer it when jokes don't draw attention to themselves. Like the Kens fighting each other and on the beach, and it's taken very seriously, and it's like a martial arts sequence, but they're all just giving each other like noogies and like titty twisters and stuff. Great. And then it becomes like a Busby Berkeley fucking music number. Even better. I could have used a feature-length version of that. Great. You know, the opening sequence is fun because it's sort of irreverent and whatnot. But then you get a whole bunch of these, you know, like the construction workers at the not Santa Monica or Venice Beach or wherever they're at. I'm like, okay, like, great, okay. And just like the ones where it's like, here's the joke, here's this like, you know, it started feeling like some sort of like Ben Shapiro like Mad Libs of like what wokeism is or whatever. And it's just like, it's like, I get what you're going for, but you're kind of you're just putting a lot of mustard on that joke right now, and you don't need to try so hard.
Yeah, I definitely feel like, because there's times where, because when this movie is able to make the joke land, like there's some real like winners here. I liked like honestly like Ryan like Ryan Gosling, like I really liked a lot of his energy.
Yeah, he's got a very good like himbo like sincerity going on.
Yeah, or like I like a part where there's a you know, during like kind of like the low points where Barbie's like, you know, like she's like, oh, you know, there's nothing I can do now, and you know, it's like I forget exactly how they said it, but she's like, you know, it's like, I just want to, you know, like this normal person, you know, can't do anything. And then the narrator cuts in and says, note to the filmmakers, Margot Robbie is the wrong person to cast in this role to make this point.
Yeah.
Like that one got the theater rolling I was in. But a lot of like the more, you know, that's as you put it, kind of like the SNL kind of humor, like you know, someone going like, you know, is a little, I was like, okay.
Yeah, or like the fucking like when they're all like brainwashed and the girl's like, I'm gonna get some stuff for my hungry guys, and I'm like, that is literally from a Totino's commercial ad that my friends quote at me like 80 times a month or whatever. So like, get some new material, my guys.
Yeah. The Snyder Cut joke was weird.
That was weird.
I was like,
is that like WB trying to like get ahead of the like shit or something, or like?
Oh yeah, because like they're looking at maybe like, because they took the trailer offline, and then I think they started taking kind of like the Zack Snyder's Justice League off of Max in a few countries.
Delightful.
Oh my god. It's like guys, like we already had to sit through this for 3 years. Don't start them back up again.
Just let them have it.
Yeah, it's like, you know, like I said, like when it's somebody like saying a joke at the screen, batting average isn't so hot. But when like something funny is happening, or like you know, when something is happening to a character and they have like a reaction to it, that's usually has a much better batting average as far as the humor goes.
Yeah, I think that's a good differential.
Yeah. And the thing is that, you know, again, like this movie kind of has the subtlety of a sledgehammer, but at the same time, it's the Barbie movie. So,
True.
Yeah. And apparently, like, again, not subtle, but some people still aren't getting the fucking message. like the people have just been throwing a hissy fit online. And things that I feel like this movie actually does have some interesting things to say. Kind of about how, like, you know, with modern feminism and masculinity in the world today. Because one of like the main messages of the movie is how there's so much pressure on women to be perfect, a lot of pressure in women's media to be perfect, and not just, depictions of women, but just some. There's so much more scrutiny there. Like a decade ago, Twilight was being ridiculed and criticized because it didn't have a strong female protagonist. It was problematic for young girls. Belle Swan is a bad role model. And Michael Bay's Transformers didn't get that. They didn't have that kind of scrutiny to them.
Sure, yeah, kind of like too double standard.
Yeah, and I feel like there's kind of this better, there's this, better understanding now where even in this new time period where women have been, quote unquote, liberated, so to say, they're still held to this higher standard, this kind of like unfair standard. And there's a line that goes roughly, if even a doll like Barbie is never good enough, then what chance does any real life human woman have? And I think that's a powerful sentiment.
Yeah, I think that America Ferrera's sort of like airing of grievances, or kind of like trying to articulate all of these small and large sort of hypocritical standards that she's expected to kind of adhere to, is a really effective moment in that. And I think that kind of actually think about that might be kind of what crystallizes her relationship with her daughter, because her daughter can kind of look at her and understand like what she's been dealing with and where she's coming from as a woman, rather than just kind of her annoying mom and whatnot. Yeah, so I think in moments like that, it definitely kind of it brings more layers to that sentiment.
Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense like that, because her daughter is kind of like, oh, Barbie, you're just, you hold us down, you have unfair standards, you're a fascist.
It's like,
and then also again, just the Margot Robbie's face when she gets called that, she's like, oh.
Apparently Barbie knows what fascism is.
Oh, I wonder what textbooks in Barbie Land look like.
God. Well, there's a lot of learning about beach, so maybe it's in there.
We'll fight them on the beaches.
There we go.
And another big part of this movie again that we were talking about is with Ken. And again, all of these like right-wing grifters are like shitting themselves right now, buying Barbie dolls and burning them because they just look at this movie and they just go into this blind rage, and they miss the part where like Barbie being dismissive of Ken is very clearly framed as being wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that they're, like looking at this with any sort of honest,
No, of course not. Of course not.
I don't think they're not processing this like in the way that a normal human being would. But
yeah, like this isn't like a rebuttal to them, because like
I'm not at all interested in their fucking position.
Yeah, it's
bullshit.
Yeah, like, you can't rebut someone who isn't interested in having an honest discussion. I'm just pointing out how like you can't honestly watch this movie and be like, oh yes, this movie is saying that Ken is a very, very, it is like, that Ken is just this evil person, and not like, oh, he, was tired of being shoved to the side. He wasn't a person in Barbie's eyes, and he was just an accessory. He wanted to be someone, and he comes to the real world and he is like, I could be someone here, because to him being quote unquote someone was being prestigious, having, being able to say, this is how things are going to be, having that wealth, having horses. He loves the horses.
And Sylvester Stallone and Bill Clinton. It was bananas.
Ken, don't go to Bill Clinton. Not for this. It was like, he let those define his personality. Kind of like how a lot of young men, boys today, they see likes of, like, you know, Logan Paul, Andrew Tate, and they get like enamored by this lavish lifestyle that gets projected onto the internet. That grind set mindset, I guess you could say.
There we go. Yeah, and it's kind of this overcalculation because he's feeling unappreciated. He's also just very gullible, naive, easily corrupted.
Yeah, like he doesn't, you know, he doesn't see, like, you know, like all like the centuries of history that like we're aware of. He just sees like, oh, I could be important too. And then, yeah, and again, like, you know, there's that point where, like, he kind of turns to Barbie. He's like, oh, it's my house now, you know, and there's this moment where you can kind of see a little bit more of the hurt coming through, and he's like, you know, how does it feel? And, you know, like, oh, it's, again, not subtle. It's definitely not subtle, but you can see that beat of Barbie realizing, oh my gosh, I treated him so badly. What have I done?
Right, there's kind of lessons learned on all sides.
And at the end of the movie, you know, like, he has this breakdown and everything, and they have like a heart-to-heart talk, and she encourages him to be like, you know, you don't need all this, like, this flashy stuff to kind of fill that identity within you. You can be, you know, you can make yourself be somebody, and I will support you now to become someone. You know, you are Kenough. I don't know how to pronounce that shirt he was wearing at the end.
To start doing some transcendental meditation, get his life in order.
So I'm gonna do some calculations to see if hippie will sell.
There we go.
Yeah, like, again, like it has its rough points. It has things that I wish worked a little better than they did, but overall, it feels like it came from an honest place, and I really liked it.
Yeah, it's a cute movie. It's a fun watch.
Yeah. Any further thoughts on it?
Well, I mean, I need to dedicate an entire doctoral thesis to Alan. That was the greatest character in the entire film, bar none. Michael Cera hasn't, like, aged a day since Scott Pilgrim, but Jesus.
Yes, we all
gaze into his eyes forever and cry.
My God. Calm down there. But yes, I feel like this is a movie that, you know, if you look at it and you think, oh, this, you know, it's not for everybody. Again, it's quite loud, but I feel like if you're the target audience for this, you can watch the trailer and know if you're the target audience, you'll have a real blast with it.
Absolutely.
Speaking of blast.
In a world where a movie about the creation, use, and proliferation of atomic weaponry is fated to be only the second most politically divisive movie released this weekend, Christopher Nolan brings together literally every actor on the planet for a J. Robert Oppenheimer biopic. Watch in amazement as people stream into a theater for an unbranded, non-franchise film, probably for the last time ever. But don't worry, the movie will solo a Star Wars story, its imagery right to you. The big suit up with his hat and pipe, the Albert Einstein cameo, the way he found his famous "I am become death" line. It's all here, folks. So make sure to top off the sizzling glitter fest of Barbie with a 3-hour-long movie about a man's life being ripped apart that reminds you the only thing scarier than the perils of nuclear hellfire are the machinations of the American federal government.
So, that was a bit that I wrote for you about
Indeed.
Oppenheimer. But I will say this, because, like, as much as I kind of poked fun there at it, I actually really liked this movie. And I know that it was written and directed by your favorite filmmaker in the entire world.
Oh, absolutely. I have posters of him like above my bed, and I just kind of stare wistfully into his eyes, and I say, "Nobody knows how to repeat phrases over and over again quite like you do."
That's a terrifying image. Now,
I need help.
But yeah, so, but I think that our opinion on this does diverge a bit more, actually, because like I said, I really liked it, and from what we've kind of like, you know, chatted about a little bit, like leading up to this podcast, I know that you weren't as keen on this one.
You know, I guess so. Like I said before, I try to come in to give every movie a fair shake. This one, I will readily admit that I think he's a fine director, but I do not particularly enjoy his movies, primarily from the angle of like Chris Nolan as screenwriter, I guess. And having gone to this movie, I'm like, okay, let's, you know, give it its fair shake. And I do have to say, it's a very ordinary movie about a remarkable person for me. It has all of his strengths as a director, and it has all of his weaknesses as well. And it's kind of the same as a lot of others from that regard for me.
Yeah, and I feel like as I like Christopher Nolan a bit more as a director. Part of that is just because like I watched Inception when I was 14, and that was like one of those movies that made me fall in love with movies. You know? And so like since then I've always been like, I've been partial to this guy and his work. And I do think, you know, he has his strengths. Writing is not one of those strengths. I feel like, you know, he seems to be at his best when he's adapting someone else's story. Like, he'll take a story and he kind of tell it in an interesting way. But the meat of the story isn't always 100% when he comes up with it himself.
Yeah, I think of his filmography, I enjoy probably The Prestige the most, and I think he co-wrote that with his brother. But again, like you're saying, it's adapted from a novel. He's got a more set framework to work within, and it's, you know, obviously dealing with like character archetypes and relationships he's interested in, but he's on a little bit more of like tracks, you know, whereas other films tend to go a little bit differently. I think like if we're talking about his writing, like the broadest problem that I like have, and it's present in different ways, is he's very like declarative about what his movie is about. And he's very like, we talked about Barbie being sledgehammer, like he's very sledgehammer, like Interstellar. Michael Caine reads fucking Dylan Thomas poem over and over and over. It's like, I wonder what, and then, you know, because if that's not enough, he has Anne Hathaway scream about love or something. And then, you know, he kind of matures a little bit with like Dunkirk, and he realizes like a theme isn't like an entire like sentence, but like an idea. So he just has Kenneth Branagh say home every 5 seconds. And you know, it's just very like, this one wasn't quite as egregious, but I could still like feel him hovering behind me with a sledgehammer every time somebody said like theory can only take you so far, or like the political half of it had some kind of, had this smack to it. And it's just, it's again, it's very like, I need some level of like him trusting me as a viewer to understand what he's telling me, like without him having to like shove my face in it and then do it again and again and again. And it just kind of gets wearing after a while.
Yeah, because you know, when he has like this material, like he has like kind of like a little bit more to work with, like a historical event, you know, he can make that work. Otherwise, like when he's doing his own original stuff, he names his main character protagonist.
Yeah, oh god, didn't even think about that.
Yeah, like
boy.
Again, like I like his movies, and Tenet. Well, we're not talking about Tenet, so I don't have to talk about that.
There we go.
But I feel like this was definitely like a big upswing from that. And because what I like about this movie is that when it comes to like a story and everything, I feel like because you have like different themes going through here, but I like that at the end of the day, at least what I took away from it was just this portrait of this really fascinating man, you know, because I knew Oppenheimer, he know his famous words, and we know where he got his famous words, apparently. That's another part.
Kinky.
You know, I'll just say this up front. Like, as much as I'm saying, like, oh, I like this movie, I actually liked it more than I liked Barbie. The first half of this was kind of rough. I was not super... I was like, I was liking it just fine, but I was like, oh, I don't know about this.
Yeah, I was fine with it. Jumps back and forth. It centers on the Trinity test blast, but it kind of is dealing with the lead up, the Manhattan Project, and then kind of this cabinet hearing and kind of the fallout of like his disenfranchisement from the government, if you will, Oppenheimer's. And I was fine with it being like non-linear. I don't think I was having a difficult time following it in terms of like what the events were. It did have this effect where it felt, despite its runtime, especially in this first portion, it was like the world's longest trailer. Like they're just saying these phrases and like they have an import to them. You could take any of those out and like cut them together into a teaser or whatever. And it just robbed the film as we're starting to kind of get a hold of every other character, the two women in his life, the various members of this Los Alamos task force. It's like he's got these flashcards. He's just kind of showing them to you quickly, like go. Okay, we got to get on to the next thing. Just trust me. Oh, they're married now. Okay. He's still screwing around with Jean Tatlock. Okay. It's just like I have no connection to any of them, and I don't understand. I mean, other than on a very literal level, I don't understand any of them.
Yeah, and that's again, Nolan has never been a strong romance writer. Yeah, it's I feel like when it comes to a lot of like those like more like intimate human connections, it's very much almost feels like calculating in a way, where it's like you can't just have like scene plus other scene equals romance, and it's like you gotta have a little bit more like a little bit more of like the warmth connection there, and like the first part of the movie that kind of focuses on the personal relationships, didn't quite connect for me. And here's the thing, like the story being told out of order, like that doesn't bother me. It's a Christopher Nolan movie. I know I'm going in and it's gonna be like, oh, the scenes are all over the place. So I was expecting that. It's the way that the dialogue is filmed that was driving me insane.
Oh, you don't want every single short sentence to be a shot, reverse shot, like cut. I thought I was having a seizure a couple of times, especially at the end.
I was like, every time we sat down to a conversation, I wasn't like, oh, it's a boring conversation. Like, no, it's what they were saying. I was like, okay, like, want to see where this goes. But every sentence was a new shot, reverse shot, reverse shot. I was like, dude, I know you're better than this.
It was whiplash inducing for sure. It was like very like I was getting bad PTSD flashbacks to like Bohemian Rhapsody or something.
Yeah, like just the cuts there. I was like, what? I was so that was a part. I was just like very, I was like going through this, and I was like, this is kind of rough so far. And then the other thing is, again, I kind of put it in my little thing for you to read. Some of the way that it kind of dealt with, I guess you say, the iconography of the story. Like, and it's because like this became like a little bit of a meme where like when Einstein shows up in the trailer for the movie, somebody did an edit where like the crowd in the theater like jumps up and goes wild, like, oh my god, it's Einstein from the Scientist Cinematic Universe.
Yeah.
And the way it's done in the movie is actually, I kind of like it because he's walking out to meet somebody. It's like a much like more distant shot, and then when the wind blows the hat back, then you see the hair, and you're like, oh, that's Einstein, because that's like the very recognizable hairdo.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm totally fine with him being in the film. Like, he looked a little goofy, but, like, not having him would be like, well, we're not going to have, you know, Heisenberg or Feynman, because that'd be cheesy or something like that. It's like, no, he's just in this tapestry. I will say, though, that the like, towards the end of the film, when, like, that, like, car pulls away and he's just, like, standing behind it, that was fucking hysterical. That was great. But yeah, like, I mean, he's fine that he's in the movie.
Yeah, like that was alright. And then like there's this part where like they get to Los Alamos, they're building the little tests, they're building the little town and everything. And there's like this dramatic music that kind of like a zoom in on like his pipe and hat lying on the table, and he picks it up and he takes the pipe, and it's like, okay. It's like a little bit goofy, but I think the absolute worst one was he was, you know, there's like a little sex scene and everything, and then
oh god,
and then the
what's this passage say? Like, oh no.
like you know, holds it out as she's like straddling him. She's like, what does it say? And then he says, I am become death, destroy worlds. I was like, no.
She wanted something to accompany Le Petit Mort.
I like to think if she grabbed like literally any other book, it would just be like,
it's like, oh, the places you'll go.
Oh my god.
I do not like green eggs, Sam. I am.
Oh no. I am become the Wizard of Oz.
God.
But yeah, like that was just like such a weird way to like force that in. Like, I think you could have just like just have her be like at the bookcase, maybe like, you know, have the camera like she's like, oh, you read and everything, and then maybe have the camera linger on like the book spine. It's like, oh, he reads this thing.
I would just feel like the Bhagavad Gita or whatever. Yeah, I don't know if there's an organic way to introduce that.
Yeah, it's like
I feel like everyone knows the attribution. Like, it could have worked out either way.
Yeah,
but it's kind of small potatoes in the grand scheme of things. It's just very odd.
Yeah, I was like that one scene, like, why? But so here's the thing. So there's all that stuff. But then about like the halfway point, I feel like the movie starts to get better and better. And like even to the point where like I noticed that a lot of like the discussions were even being framed like better. It wasn't such like a flat shot reverse shot. And then when you have like the Trinity test, like everything from there to the end of the movie, I really loved. Like everything kind of fell into place.
The Trinity sequence was the standout for me. I think we were talking earlier about Mission Impossible 18 or whatever we're at to, and like how that's so good. All of its action set pieces are really good at like maintaining and controlling tension through like the layering of stakes and introducing different elements, and it maintains clarity of all of them, but you're getting more little parts of your puzzle, you know, kind of coming together to make this, you know, whole exciting moment build up. Whereas here it's very simple and controlled, and you know, an exercise in simplicity, and just one simple event. Well, not simple in theory, but like the actual thing that's going to happen is quite cut and dry, but you're seeing all these different angles of like the different parties involved and everything. So it's very like edge of your seat stuff going on.
Oh yeah, it's like it all builds up, and then I gotta say, Chris would be so mad to hear this story. So when I saw this in the theater, because like everything builds, like the music is building, and then the detonation happens, and there's like that silence.
Yeah.
You know? And the moment it goes off and like it goes silent, this person sitting like 5 seats next to me decides it's the time to go, "What's going on?" What? It's like she starts talking, and I'm like,
amazing.
What the fuck is wrong with you?
Performance art. She knew what she was doing. The most like literally understandable moment in the entire movie.
Like, don't you understand? This is a sacred event.
I will say, speaking of silence, this was... I had saw it in IMAX presentation, so it was like big and loud, but the mix was at least like intelligible this time. Like, so kudos to whoever did that. I don't have to like be like, what are you saying?
I mean, you can speak for yourself, but I personally like when I can't hear what anybody's saying and it's just music blaring at me.
I love loud organ.
But yeah, like this, I actually had, because I was telling people about the movie, and somebody asked me, he's like, "Can you understand what they're saying this time?" And I said, "Yes, you can." So, and then, and here's the thing, so like the bomb goes off, and I remember like I kind of checked, I was like, there's still like 40, 50 minutes of movie left. It's weird. And I was like, I hope this doesn't like kind of like drag on too long with the ending. And fool I was, because like everything that happened after the bomb test was like my favorite part of the movie. And you have the scene where like Oppenheimer does the whole like, oh, mission success, we did it, we dropped the bomb, and it's like this big auditorium, and this was kind of a cool little payoff, and I like it because like I didn't even think it was a payoff at first, but if you go in the trailer, there's this really interesting like sound design they use that at first I thought was like
the train that was stomping feet.
Like I thought it was a train engine, and then in a movie we see like a brief shot of like it's stomping feet. And I was like, what was that? And then in this moment we see that it's the people stomping the feet cheering that they have the bomb is going off, the war is over, and how this and I like that that's the sound that begins to haunt Oppenheimer through the end of the movie, because that's like the thing that is that's one like the things that's hanging over him.
Yeah, I was interested in some of the more. I like that he it's a very literal story. I like some of the little flights of fancy that Nolan takes in some of the touches of the film. Early in the runtime when he's in studying and whatnot, like you have these glimpses of this like, I don't know, like the dawn of quantum mechanics. Essentially, it's very abstract and it's kind of beautiful in a weird way. You have these star fields and abstract visualizations of like electron clouds and all of this kind of stuff. Like, and at that point, he's studying black holes and what have you, and the world seems it's this new world to discover, and it's infinite possibilities, but we know where that leads him and the rest of these physicists and stuff. And then you have kind of in paralleling to that, then you have in the gym address or whatever you want to call it, he's haunted by these visions of like the very concrete and very terrible implications and direct, effects of what his work has accomplished, elsewhere, and kind of, and then paired with that, you have, like you're saying, this kind of sound that he begins to kind of associate with this moment of triumph that he's now kind of seeing in a different light. I think Nolan kind of overuses that sound a little bit. I think it was starting even beforehand. It was like, well, what's going on? But, you know, from your angle, I think that's an interesting way to look at it. And then also just kind of like the like vibration around him, this very like anxiety inducing, like overwhelming sense that he's feeling. It's just like, what did I do? You know, what have I accomplished?
Yeah, like that scene, right, where he sees like the visions of like the carnage of the bomb, like imagining like the people around him, like what it would look like. Where the whole room is shaking. Like, I loved that scene. And there's a similar one later where like, cause he gets stuck into like this investigative committee. He's in like this little bitty room. He's being cross-examined, you know, like his words are being twisted around, used against him. You know, things he did 15 years ago are being dredged up and hurled in his face. And you feel that anxiety. You feel like he's getting cornered. All for what? For trying to speak up about how he wanted his creation to not be abused.
Yeah, and you even see it in touches with like when they're talking about Tatlock and whatnot. Like you have him and Jean like copulating in the conference room, and it's a way to kind of like it violates their privacy in a way because it's this intimate act that's being brought into the light in their relationship and everything. So I think those touches really added layer of abstraction that I appreciated in it, or layer of like, you know, heightened elements to it.
Yeah, you know, like using like these like practical effects, or using these juxtapositions of like him being like naked, like you know this copulation happening in the middle of like the room, you know, for heightened emotional effects, like a movie.
Right. Right.
Yeah, just like I feel like, you know, after like the very serious, you know, like the relatively kind of like straightforwardness that Nolan has had in his last several projects, I think having something like this where he has a bit more, it feels like he's using a bit more of like the visual language in unique ways to evoke these very powerful images. And like, good, please go in this direction more.
Yeah, or kind of to your point you were saying earlier, the conversation's starting to become a little bit more visually interesting. Later conversations in like various briefing rooms and whatnot, like you're starting to see like the relationships between the characters be captured, or like power dynamic shifting, or when Robert Downey Jr.'s character's like in the side room and they're all like shutting off the little shutters on the windows and stuff. I'm like, okay, like we're getting more than just the words that are being said or like the literal actions that are being portrayed. I'm getting information from a couple of different sources that makes it a little bit more, you know, cinematic.
Yeah, like a movie.
Like a movie.
I have to say, speaking of like Robert Downey Jr., I did not know he was in this movie. I did not know until the credits started rolling.
What?
I didn't recognize.
What?
I didn't recognize.
How did that not look like like I don't know, a Gary Oldman type? Like halfway through, I'm like, wait, is that Winston Churchill? And I'm like, no, they just put glasses on him. It's Gary Oldman. But Robert Downey Jr. looked like Robert Downey Jr. That's amazing.
You got to keep in mind, the last time I saw Robert Downey Jr. was in Doolittle. So like that was like
he's atoned for his sins.
So like that was like my last mental image of what he looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And so like, oh my god, he's actually like, but yeah, and also like Gary Oldman, I didn't even recognize him, and I was like, wait, who is Gary Oldman? Holy shit.
Yeah.
But yeah, that I think like makeup department they they knocked it out of the park on this one. And there's another thing that I thought was kind of funny, and you actually had something kind of interesting to say about this. So, one of my favorite historical facts I've now learned from this movie is that Oppenheimer was apparently called Oppie.
Yeah, it's got their affectionate pet names.
I thought that was so hilarious. You said that it kind of reminded you of something that you are familiar with.
Yeah, like I work in chemistry, so like that is one of the you know you were talking about like how the back halves of the film interest you, and like when I was reading everywhere and stuff, like, oh, it's like a lot of like people having conversations in rooms, I was excited because I didn't know that the political angle of it would be very prominent, which it is. We can kind of talk to in a moment, but like when I heard that, was very excited for like all these like really dense tangled conversations about the science. Like I wanted more of like the Manhattan Project, and that was something that I was pretty disappointed to like have it kind of gloss over, just because I think something that people can kind of forget about is that scientists are people too, and something that's so interesting about like when you get a bunch of scientists in rooms, everyone disagrees, everyone's arguing, but you do get like these, whether they are often brilliant, of course, but like Oppenheimer, there's also a charisma aspect or a control aspect, and you do get these benevolent dictators, if you will, who they establish themselves as the be-all end-all of their field or their subfield, and they, whether or not they are correct about something, people will hang on their word and follow them, which is, I think, intellectually dangerous. And it's in this film we have Benny Safdie's character Teller, is off in his corner wanting to make his fusion H-bomb and stuff, and that's about as far as like what we give it the dissent. But like I remember I was at a conference last spring, and like they were talking about, it's not really important the subject matter, but like this kind of newer aspect of the instrumentation that I work with, and old guard guy comes up and they're all like, oh my god, hanging on his every word, and then someone else newer comes up talking about a very similar topic on their podium, and like as their talk finishes, you can see these old guys like sprinting for the microphones, like ready to like absolutely tear this person a new one. And I'm like, discourse is good, but like their questioning and stuff was very much like, how can I defend my own arbitrary turf, even if it becomes irrelevant in 5 years or whatever. I don't know. I would have liked more of that discussion. Or like, for instance, like there was the one meeting that he walked in on of the scientists discussing the moral implications of their project and stuff. And it's just like that was stuff that he alludes to in the movie, but it never really allows for us to fully dig into. And I think that's something that, again, it's like it humanizes the story and keeps it grounded in something that's texturally like technical and stuff, but also I think people could understand that, even if like quantum theory is obviously very complicated, but if you can understand the dynamics of the room, I think that's what makes it for an interesting scene. And his film like doesn't allow for that, like denseness.
Yeah, like I get what you're saying, because like I think I get like the point of what he's trying to say, but there wasn't a lot of time to like elaborate on it. Like in the beginning,
3 hours.
We just needed to get the scene where he learned the phrase, where he learned the mantra. Like that was the most important scene. He had to figure out where to find the line.
Mm-hmm.
Like, at the beginning of the movie, we see like he's talking about like quantum physics with folks. Like at first he has like one person in his class, and it kind of builds, and he's like so excited to be like, oh, it's a particle and a wave at the same time. Sometimes like we don't know where things are. There's so much kind of like uncertainty going on. And he's excited. He's working on this new science that has like no practical applications so far, but he's just like, he's having a good time with it. He's active on campus. He's like, hey, let's support the Spanish Republic, who is trying to get coup d'etat by the fascists. Let's unionize. Like, he's not even like a card-carrying communist. He's just like, hey guys, overthrowing democratic governments is wrong.
Right.
And that's you see, like, he's just starting his career. It's on this good path, but then things start to get the war starts, and and like I said, there's that point where you have all the folks at the project are like, oh, like, Germany has just surrendered, do we keep working on this? And he says, let's keep going. And to kind of get back to your point, where it's like, you see that it's like, I could tell you that stuff, like, oh yes, that happened, but it would have been nice to elaborate a bit more on it, to see a bit more of like the complexities at play there.
Yeah, it's kind of just like a mission prep sequence or something.
Yeah.
Very long one.
Yeah. And there's stuff that does feel like it gets kind of skimmed over. But there's some things where I'm like, okay, I kind of get by that. Like, one thing that I was kind of surprised that wasn't in the movie, but in the hindsight, I guess it kind of makes sense, is that the infamous like demon core thing with the screwdriver.
Oh, yeah.
The thing that's become a meme for some reason.
Why not? Anything could be a meme now.
I get, like, maybe that's the reason I was like, oh, is that going to be in the movie? And then it never was. But that doesn't like tie back to Oppenheimer, I suppose. So it's just like,
yeah, but again, it's like that selectivity is important. Like, pick out the things that are going to help guide your like story about Oppenheimer. We don't need to see every single aspect of it. I'd prefer to focus in on several key elements. I think an interesting companion piece to this movie is an opera by the composer John Adams, not the president. And it's called Dr. Atomic. It's very good if you're into minimalist operas or whatever, but like it basically, it only focuses pretty much on the Trinity site, the lead up to that, but it kind of pulls out a couple of like episodes kind of around that time to help us learn more about the key characters. And so you get a more emotionally mature understanding of his relationship to Kitty, for example, or to some of the other scientists in the group. And I just like, that's like, you don't have to tell us the whole thing, you just have to tell us the most important, interesting aspects of whatever you find to be like key to us understanding this character at this really pivotal point in time. And Nolan was clearly interested in casting a wide net and creating a very comprehensive, or not comprehensive, but very like thorough understanding of the whole thing, which had this sort of delusional effect for me.
Yeah, I think that's actually why I like the last part of this movie the best, because for that first part, it kind of feels like it's going more on like the breadth of everything, like going through like so many aspects of his life. And then as we get near the end, it focuses a bit more on one particular thing that he's facing. That is the hearing and trying to keep up his advocacy, even when there's these voices in the government trying to shut him out. Like, when it focuses on that and they start digging more into like the nuances, like, well, where was his conscience like 5 years ago? Where was that when, like, as it starts to dig in more there, that's when it gets more and more fascinating.
Yeah, I think that's true. Like, it definitely has benefits from having a little bit more narrow like breadth of focus there. My problem for me with the second half, again, it's if I'm gonna get people talking in rooms, 100% here for it, ready for it. It just never felt like it moved past like the whole. This is a different angle than things I'm about to mention, but the idea of like the Hollywood blacklist is something that Hollywood filmmakers are understandably obsessed with. we have Mank and Trumbo and probably 80 other movies, and like Arthur Miller's The Crucible kind of contemporaneously was dealing with that. And like it's an interesting picture of like what happens when you let these demagogues like control creative output of other people, or control unionization or something like that. But it just never really moved past that very kind of like surface level like understanding of it. Like I came out of this with the same understanding from a more geopolitical angle than I did with like Mank or whatever. It's like, okay, this sort of kangaroo court Kafkaesque nonsense is bad, but like, do you have anything more to tell me?
I think for me, like because obviously we know that this Red Scare was this massive thing that was used against political opponents of the government, trying to force trying to persecute people, not just for their political beliefs, but also just anybody that you didn't like. You could just be like, oh, you looked at a union member 5 years ago, we're going to drag your name through the mud. And yeah, like, that's nothing new. One of the things I did like is that it did get into a little bit more of like the mechanics of how it works, where it's like, oh, you don't put them on trial, you just have a hearing, and then you don't have to worry about evidence, you don't have to worry about stuff like that. You can just read whatever you want into the official transcript, and then there's nothing you can do about it.
Right. And he told us that 5 times.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of more my issue. Like, I don't have a problem. Again, I don't think it's the most original thing, but I think my issue more comes from the fact that, like, every point that he makes sure to reiterate at, like, regular intervals as if we've forgotten or something. Yeah. And that's where it really kind of just starts to kind of grate for me.
Yeah, I think, well, for me, because I always like that kind of like that political intrigue kind of stuff. And I tell you, there's a lot of repetition that goes into that kind of a thing.
Yeah, but I don't know. I guess I've like it just the way it was structured and the way that he wrote it out. It was like it was accessible. Like that's great and stuff, but it just wasn't very like intellectually stimulating to me.
Yeah,
it didn't provoke me to think about this more in a different way.
Yeah, and to be fair, yeah, like it's not like it's not going to be a super big like surprise or anything like that. Like Red Scare, you get like a little bit more of the mechanics of how it worked, but not like nothing super. I get like to use your words like super intellectual. But I think overall, when it came to the end of the movie, like what I was hoping for was to know more about Oppenheimer, his life. And I really liked the ending part of this movie. Like the final shot of this, I thought was super cool. Because you have just seeing this guy going from this happy, this professor is like having so much excitement. Then he goes, and as the war starts, he realizes, oh my god, like the Nazis are building a bomb. Like the line you get in the trailer of, I know what it means if the Nazis have a bomb. It's nothing good. So, right. Like, so in a way, he almost is like he has to build it because like we need to get there before they do, or else we're all screwed. And then the Germans surrender. They can't build the bomb anymore. Japan isn't anywhere near trying to get the technology. And at that point, though, the government isn't just going to say, oh, we don't need this anymore, we'll just put it away. Like, no, you're going to give us what we want, and we're going to use it however we want. And then, he's horrified by like the scale of it at Trinity. He sees the aftermath, and when he tries to say, hey guys, like this is like really bad, I don't think we understand how bad this is going to get, let's take things slow and think about this. And he gets slandered like that. And the ending of this, because there's this like this little thread through the movie, a little bit of like oh, there's a chance that if we detonate it, the nuclear chain reaction doesn't stop and it just destroys the entire planet. And obviously that doesn't happen. But at the end of the movie, they kind of revisit that. He's like, I know we were talking about destroying the planet, how that might have happened, and I think we did. And you just see that shot of him, like Cillian Murphy, looking like into the camera, doing his best, give me an Oscar performance.
He was quite good in it.
Oh my god, Cillian Murphy was so good. Like the acting across the board, I thought was really great.
Yeah. I will say that last moment was kind of like, I felt like it was like Chris Nolan just handed me like a joint or something. It's like, what if we did start the chain reaction, man? It's just really slow. And it's like, man is the chain reaction, dude. I'm like, oh god.
Oh no. But
that was me being cynical and being done with 3 hours.
Oh god, that's yeah, just I really like the ending there. And just like I think that in the end, what I was hoping for was just a character study about this man, and I got what I was looking for. It's like, yeah, I could have gone deeper in some aspects, but then you would have been there for another half hour.
If it had been an interesting conversation, I would have been fine with it.
The 30 minutes where they stop the rest of the movie and just talk about quantum mechanics. Cillian Murphy just delivers a full lecture about quantum mechanics in the middle of the movie.
Let's do it.
But I like that more people are going to get to hear about his story, because I didn't know too much about him going into this. And I like that people are just going to see this. Like, this is making so much more money than they were projecting it to.
Yeah, I think it's good that like this kind of thing is still shown to have a viable audience. Yeah. I don't necessarily like it, but I think that it's worthy of attention.
Absolutely. Like, I'm glad that I mean, to be fair, from what I've heard, apparently a lot of its ticket sales are happening because people wanted to see Barbie and then it sold out.
Like, well, this is pretty much the same, might as well.
But yeah, like I really enjoyed it. I think it's a definite return to form for Christopher Nolan. Yeah, any final thoughts on it?
Not really. I think it was solid. I have my qualms about it. I'm not going to rag on this. It was fine.
Whatever you want to say. It's our podcast. You can say whatever we want.
That is true. We can. We could have used more Florence Pugh.
I mean, everything could use Florence Pugh. Let's be real.
Everything.
I'm surprised she wasn't in Barbie. Yeah, because
that would have been wild. What if they like trade casts and do the same movie?
Is Cillian Murphy still the lead?
Yeah, he's Ken. You have to 1-to-1 swap them.
I am become Ken, bringer of patriarchy. And then Ryan Gosling. In the same outfit too.
Honestly, that'd be wild.
Oh man.
I mean, I feel like Margot Robbie could pull it off. Like, Lord knows Emily Blunt didn't have much to do in this movie.
I did like the little because she came in for the for the questioning. At first she's like, oh, I don't know, and then she's like
just fucking laying the smackdown on Jason Clarke.
Yeah, I was like, oh, that was like a fun moment. Like there's so many good little moments in this movie. It's so good.
Yeah.
A
lot of little David Krumholtz is fun to see in this. Benny Safdie's great. Alex Wolff is in like one shot. It's like, wait, is that the kid from Hereditary? and then just wasn't in it anymore.
Josh Peck is in this, like the Drake and Josh. Josh. I was just like, oh, this person's in this too. What is going on?
For the entire, what's his face? David Dastmalchian shows up to be. I love how he cast like Dane DeHaan and David Dastmalchian. I was like, you guys look like slimy losers. So we need one slimy army guy and we need one slimy politician guy.
Oh, and Alden Ehrenreich is in this.
Yeah. Everyone's in this movie.
Yay! And they were all great actors, and they deserve to be paid a fair wage.
There we go.
David Zaslav, can you hear me? Yeah, on that note, I think this concludes our, let me check the time here, 83 minutes Barbenheimer episode. Wow.
There's a lot to talk about.
But, hey, thank you so much for joining us tonight, everybody out there. And this was a big event. I'm not sure what our next episode is going to be, but yeah, this was it was so much fun. And yeah, I don't know, it's Barbenheimer. Yeah. It's the most
it's Barbenheimer, bitches.
It's the most important thing to happen in the history of the world. Matt Damon said so.
No.
All right. Wait.
Delightful.
Yeah, take care, everybody, and have a good evening. Bye.
Good night.